In 1973, there was a short film called Television Delivers People. It ran on public access television in America with no narration over most of it, just plain text scrolling on a blank screen set to elevator music. And the text said this: "You are the product of TV. You are delivered to the advertiser who is the customer. He consumes you." That was over 50 years ago. Before the internet, before smartphones, before any of this existed, and someone had already worked out the whole game. You are not the audience. You are the thing being sold. Here is what nobody tells you plainly enough. You are the golden ticket. Not a customer, not a user, the actual asset. Every second of your attention is worth real money to somebody, and the entire architecture of the modern internet has been built around one single question. How do we get more of it? Think about how much time and engineering and psychology has gone into getting you to look at a phone screen for one extra minute. Billions of dollars. Some of the smartest people alive, PhDs in behavioral science working full-time for years on the specific problem of extending your attention on an app by a few more seconds per session. Nobody spends that kind of money and that kind of talent on something worthless. They spend it because you are worth an extraordinary amount. Your attention at scale across billions of people like you is one of the most valuable resources on Earth right now. More valuable than oil was to the last century. And you are giving it away for free. Multiple hours of it, every single day, to companies who understand exactly what it is worth and have built their entire business model around extracting as much of it as possible while making sure you never fully realize the exchange you are actually making. This is not just an American story or a British story. This is happening across the entire Western world in exactly the same way, at exactly the same time, because the platforms doing it do not care what passport you carry. Whether you are in London or Los Angeles, Manchester or Miami, the same apps, the same algorithms, the same extraction is happening to you, tuned by the same behavioral science, sold to the same advertisers. Britain and America and the rest of the West are not living through separate versions of this. We are living through the same one. That is exactly what is being engineered into an entire generation of people across Britain, America, and the rest of the Western world right now, not by accident, by specific design, tested and refined by companies who understand human psychology at a level most of us have never had to think about because it has never before been profitable for anyone to think about it this deeply. So let me walk you through exactly how this works, not in the abstract, in specific, named platforms, with specific, documented mechanisms that are extracting value from you right now, today, whether you notice it or not. Start with Instagram, because this is the one everyone in the West interacts with daily, and almost nobody understands the actual mechanics of. In 2019, Facebook's own internal researchers wrote a presentation slide that said, in their own words, "We make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls." That is not an outside critic. That is Facebook's own research team telling Facebook's own leadership what their own platform was doing to teenage girls across Britain and America and everywhere else Instagram operates. Another internal slide said teens blame Instagram for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression, and this reaction was unprompted and consistent across all groups. They knew. They wrote it down. They kept it internal, and they kept running the platform exactly the same way. 13% of suicidal British teenage girls in Facebook's own research trace their desire to end their life back to Instagram specifically. Facebook's own data. About British girls, buried for 2 years until the Wall Street Journal got hold of it in 2021, the gym culture that Instagram created did not happen by accident. Every workout filmed, every set given a camera angle, the before photo and the after photo. This is not a fitness culture, it is a performance culture that happens to use the gym as its backdrop. And it exists because the platform's algorithm rewards this specific kind of content with reach. And reach is the currency that keeps creators producing more of it. And more of it keeps users scrolling longer. And users scrolling longer is the entire business model. You are the golden ticket. And Instagram has built the most sophisticated machine in human history for cashing you in. Now Uber Eats. Because most people think of it as a convenience. You are hungry, you tap the app, food arrives. That is the surface. Underneath that surface, Uber's own engineering team published a blog post in March 2026 describing something called a sequential modeling and hetero mixture of expert system. In plain English, this is an artificial intelligence system that processes your behavior over time. Every order, every scroll, every pause on a restaurant listing, every time you almost ordered something and then did not. All of it gets fed into a model that predicts what you are going to click and what you are going to order before you have decided yourself. The specific improvement they reported from this system was measured in advertising revenue, not customer satisfaction, not delivery speed advertising revenue. The system exists to make you more predictable so that restaurants can pay to be placed in front of you at the exact moment your predicted hunger and your predicted vulnerability are highest. DoorDash is doing the same thing. They describe themselves now not as a delivery company, but as a commerce media platform. That phrase means they have built an advertising business layered on top of your hunger. The restaurant pays. You are shown that restaurant first. You order it thinking you chose it. You did not choose it. You were shown it because someone paid for you to be shown it, based on a model of your behavior that has been building every single time you have ever used the app. You think you are ordering dinner, you are training a machine that predicts your hunger for a fee. Now Apple Watch. And the fitness trackers more broadly, because this is the one that genuinely shocked me when I looked into it properly. Your Apple Watch, your Fitbit, your Oura Ring, your Whoop Band, none of them are covered by the medical privacy laws you assume protect your health information. HIPAA, the law that protects your medical records, only applies to actual healthcare providers and insurers. Your fitness tracker is not a healthcare provider. It is a consumer electronics company, which means your heart rate, your sleep data, your stress levels, your exercise patterns, all of it has fewer legal protections than the file your doctor keeps on you. A study in 2023 found that 78% of fitness apps were sharing data with Meta and Google, even when the user had set their account to private. You searched for running shoes recently. Your fitness app may have told Meta you are a runner before you told anyone. Health insurers are already using this. 21% of employers who offer health insurance are already collecting data from their employees' wearable devices. Some insurance programs already adjust premiums based on what your watch reports about your activity levels, framed as a discount for healthy behavior. Functionally, a surveillance mechanism that determines what you pay based on data extracted from your wrist, with no federal law currently preventing it. But here is the story that made me actually stop and reread it twice. In 2022, an Israeli organization planted fake running routes inside 6 top-secret military facilities using Strava, the fitness tracking app that lets you log your runs and see them on a public map. Over 100 individuals were identified through this, including personnel from Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, people whose job depends on nobody knowing where they are, logging their runs on an app, without thinking about what that data reveals. In 2025, French nuclear submarine crew members leaked the positions of their patrols through Strava. People on a nuclear submarine, the most secretive, most protected military asset a country can have, revealed by soldiers wanting to log their exercise streak. In March 2026, a sailor aboard the French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle revealed the ship's exact location by logging a run he did on the deck. Read that again. A sailor on an aircraft carrier gave away the location of a multi-billion-dollar military asset because he wanted a fitness app to record that he went for a run. That is not a hypothetical about data privacy. That happened. Multiple times. To some of the most security-conscious people and institutions on Earth. If a nuclear submarine crew and Mossad personnel cannot use these apps without accidentally revealing state secrets, what exactly do you think your fitness tracker is doing with your data? You bought the watch because you wanted to get healthier. You're also wearing a tracking device that reports your location, your patterns, your body's most intimate signals to a company whose business model depends on selling insight into your behavior to whoever will pay for it. Carl Jung, writing decades before any of this existed, described something he called the persona, the mask a person builds for the social world, as distinct from the actual self underneath it. Jung was not against the persona, he thought it was necessary. His concern was what happens when a person loses the ability to distinguish between the mask and the face, when the performance becomes so total that the person forgets there was ever anything underneath it. that is what has happened to an entire generation raised inside these platforms across Britain and America and the rest of the West. The gap between the presented self and the actual self has been engineered to be as wide and as profitable as possible, because the platform makes its money from the performance, not from whatever is happening underneath it. Now, dating apps, because this deserves its own moment. Tinder, Hinge, and the dozen other apps under the same corporate umbrella, Match Group, generated over $3.1 billion in revenue in 2024. That money comes entirely from people who are still single and still paying. The moment two people actually form a relationship and delete the app, the revenue from those two people stops. The business has no financial incentive for you to succeed. It has every financial incentive for you to keep swiping, keep hoping, keep almost finding the right person without quite finding them. Gen Z noticed. Usage of these apps among under 25s has been dropping. The specific phrase that keeps coming up when researchers ask young people why they are leaving these platforms, not just dating apps, but social media generally, is this: it stopped feeling like mine. That is the whole thing in 5 words. The relationship, the identity, the self-expression that these platforms were supposed to facilitate ends up belonging to the platform more than to the person, because the platform was always in the room, collecting the data, refining the model, learning what keeps you there. Now let me talk about the 3 generations, because they have each been extracted from differently, and it is worth naming how. Boomers got Facebook, and Facebook did something specific to that generation. It became the single largest engine of misinformation ever built, and boomers were the demographic most willing to share things without checking them, most susceptible to outrage bait, most likely to forward a completely fabricated statistic to 300 people because it confirmed something they already believed. Facebook did not create that instinct. It found it, measured it, and then optimized its entire feed to serve content that triggered it, because outrage keeps people scrolling, and scrolling sells advertising. Millennials got the performance economy in its first full form. Facebook photo albums, then Instagram, then LinkedIn. Millennials were the first generation to document their entire adult lives publicly in real time for an audience. Every relationship, every job change, every holiday, filtered and captioned and posted for response. The specific intimacy of actually living those moments got diluted by the requirement to also produce content about them while they were happening. And Gen Z got all of it simultaneously, more intensely, from an earlier age, with better technology doing the extraction. The average age of first Instagram use keeps falling, which means the specific developmental years when a person is supposed to be figuring out who they are. Gen Z spent those years inside a machine that had a very specific financial interest in shaping who they became, because a more insecure, more comparison-driven, more anxious user is a more engaged user, and a more engaged user is worth more money. Every generation has been harvested, just through different mechanisms tuned to what each generation would respond to. Now, Hollywood, because the same extraction logic runs through the film industry, and it is worth understanding why. Homer wrote the Odyssey nearly 3,000 years ago, a story about a man fighting his way home against impossible odds, staying loyal to everything he valued, while the world offered him easier alternatives at every turn. It has survived 3,000 years because it describes something true about being human that does not expire. Christopher Nolan decided to make it into a film, one of the last directors in Hollywood who can genuinely be called an artist rather than a product manager, and the trailer that dropped became the most disliked film trailer in recorded history. 700,000 dislikes within days. People were watching it mainly to read the comments underneath it. One of the most liked comments said, "There is more Greek in the yogurt in my fridge than in this movie." What happened is the same thing that happens to every piece of culture that passes through the modern studio system. The investors need a film that has calculated broad enough demographic appeal to guarantee a return. So, a 3,000-year-old story about identity and loyalty gets run through a machine that optimizes for maximum reach and minimum risk. And what comes out the other end is a product shaped like the Odyssey, with the word Odyssey on it, stripped of the specific human truth that made the original survive 3 millennia, because that specific truth is a risk, and risk is bad for the model. Meanwhile, the low-budget independent films that nobody funded through a demographic calculation, films like Obsession and The Backrooms, are massively outperforming their budgets on return, because they were made by people who had something real to say, and said it for an audience they actually understood. That is the thing the system cannot manufacture. You can fake a lot of things at scale. You cannot fake a person who genuinely means what they are saying. Now gaming, because this one specifically targets children and does not get discussed enough. The games that shaped people my age growing up were experiences, contained stories with an ending, something you could point to and say that changed how I see something. What has replaced that in the mainstream is the live service model, games designed never to end. Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, the daily login reward, the battle pass with an expiry date, the limited time item that creates artificial urgency. Every one of these systems was designed by behavioral psychologists whose entire job is to maximize the time and money a player puts into the game, not the quality of the experience the player has. This is being deployed on children, right now. The same variable reward mechanism that makes a slot machine addictive, the loot box, the daily streak, the fear of missing the limited time event, all of it engineered and tested and refined against the psychology of a developing brain that has even less capacity to resist it than an adult does. The Roman poet Juvenal wrote about bread and circuses in the 1st century. Keep the population fed and entertained, and they will not ask who is actually running things or who benefits from the arrangement. The circuses of 2026 are personalized, algorithmically tuned to each individual's specific psychological weak points. The dating app for the lonely, the gym content for the insecure, the live service game for the child whose developing brain has the least defense against it, all of it optimized, all of it funded by the same advertising logic, all of it requiring your continued attention to keep functioning. Nietzsche wrote about something he called the removal of resistance. His argument was that genuine human growth requires friction, requires the encounter with real difficulty that changes you in the overcoming of it. Every one of these platforms is specifically engineered to remove friction, to give you the reward before you have done the work that would make the reward mean anything. The dating match without the vulnerability of an actual approach, the gym content without the discipline of the actual session, the game that feels like an achievement without an achievement underneath it, and the specific effect of a life with the friction systematically removed is that the capacity to tolerate friction anywhere else starts to disappear too. The relationship that gets difficult, the job that is not immediately rewarding, the book that does not deliver in the first paragraph, the reflex trained by the swipe and the skip starts showing up everywhere. Friction exists because the brain has been trained that friction means the content should be replaced rather than worked through. So here is where all of this actually lands. You are the product of Instagram, which extracted your body image and turned it into engagement data. You are the product of Uber Eats, which built an artificial intelligence model that predicts your hunger to sell advertising space against it. You are the product of Apple Watch and every wearable, which tracks your body's most intimate signals with fewer legal protections than your actual medical file, and sometimes accidentally reveals the location of nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers because the people wearing them forgot what the data was actually doing. You are the product of the dating apps, whose entire business model requires you to remain single. You are the product of the subscription economy, engineered specifically so you never see the true total of what you are paying, with Gen Z, the generation with the least money, paying the most of anyone. You are not the customer in any of this, you are the abandoned carcass. The surplus ripped from your life is the actual product being sold over and over every single day, to people who have never met you and never will, who know more about your psychology than you have ever consciously articulated to yourself. But here is the thing that none of this can touch: the genuine inner life. The thought you have that you do not immediately turn into content, the version of yourself that exists when nobody is measuring the response. Jung's actual face underneath the persona. That is the one thing in your entire life that none of these systems can extract, because it only exists in the moments when you are not performing for them. The machine needs you to believe that the performance is the whole of you. It is not. It never was. The face was always still there, underneath the mask, whether or not you have looked at it recently. Look at it. That is the one thing on this list that is actually free. Let me go back to the beginning of all this for a second, because I think it is worth understanding where the whole idea came from, because it did not start with Facebook or Instagram. It started with television, and before that, with the specific economic model of advertising itself. The phrase "you are the product" is often credited to the film The Social Dilemma from 2020, but the actual origin goes back much further, to a media critic named Richard Serra, who made that short film in 1973, Television Delivers People, before Instagram, before the internet, before even cable television had properly taken hold. Someone had already worked out that the entire structure of advertising-funded media inverts the relationship people assume they are in with it. You think of yourself as the viewer, the audience, the one being served content. In the advertising model, you are not the audience in any meaningful sense. The advertiser is the customer. You are the product being delivered to that customer. Your attention, packaged and sold in blocks, to whoever is paying for access to it. Television did this crudely, by today's standards. It knew roughly who was watching at what time of day. It could sell advertisers a demographic guess: housewives in the afternoon, working men in the evening, broad categories, imprecise targeting, blunt instruments. What changed with the internet, and then with smartphones, and then with the specific combination of always-on connectivity and biometric wearables, is the precision of the targeting. Television could guess your demographic, Instagram knows your specific insecurities, Uber Eats predicts your specific hunger before you feel it, your Apple Watch knows your heart rate variability better than you do. The blunt instrument of 1973 has become a scalpel capable of identifying and exploiting the precise psychological vulnerability of one individual person at one specific moment, with a precision no television executive in 1973 could have imagined possible. The model did not change. The model has been the same since the first advertisement was ever placed next to editorial content. What changed is the resolution, and resolution changes everything, because a blunt instrument aimed at a broad demographic can be resisted with general skepticism. A scalpel aimed at your specific individual documented psychological pattern is much harder to see coming, because it has been built specifically to fit the shape of you. Now, something about the specific mechanics of how subscriptions extract value beyond just the money, because the financial cost is not even the main thing happening. The average person across Britain and America now spends $219 a month on subscriptions, not what they think they spend, what they actually spend when you add it all up. Ask someone directly and they guess around $86 a month. The real number is 2.5 times higher than what people believe they are paying. That gap is engineered. Small charges, different billing dates, auto-renewal that never asks you to confirm. And here is the detail that should stop you. Gen Z spends more on subscriptions than any other generation alive. $377 a month, more than millennials, more than boomers. The generation with the least stable income, the most student debt, the least chance of owning a home, is the generation paying the most every single month into a system of recurring extraction. Every subscription service you use is not just billing you monthly, it is collecting a continuous stream of behavioral data about exactly how you use it, when you use it, what you skip, what you rewatch, what you abandon halfway through. Netflix knows exactly which scenes make people stop watching a show. Spotify knows exactly which songs get skipped in the first 10 seconds. This data does not just inform what gets recommended to you next, it informs what gets made in the first place. The creative decisions behind the content you consume are increasingly downstream of the aggregated behavioral data of millions of subscribers, which means the culture being produced for you is being produced by a machine that is optimizing for your measured engagement rather than for anything resembling artistic or human value. This is why so much modern content feels the same, why so many shows follow the same structural beats, why so many songs follow the same production formula. It is not a coincidence, and it is not a lack of creativity among the people making it. It is the direct output of a system where every creative decision is checked against a model of what keeps you subscribed, and the model has converged on a specific set of patterns that reliably produce that outcome, regardless of whether those patterns produce anything that actually resonates on a human level once you get past the first 10 seconds. You're not just paying $219 a month, you are training the algorithm that decides what gets made next, with every second you watch and every second you skip. Now let me say something about the specific psychological toll of subscription fatigue itself, because it is not just a financial problem, it is an identity problem. 72% of consumers across the West report experiencing what researchers call subscription fatigue, the specific overwhelmed feeling of having too many recurring charges to track. But underneath the financial fatigue is something more specific. The average household added 3.2 new subscriptions in 2025, while cancelling only 1.8. That net accumulation is not accidental. Free trials convert to paid subscriptions silently. The friction to sign up is minimal. The friction to cancel is maximised deliberately through dark patterns, hidden cancellation buttons, multi-step processes designed to make quitting exhausting enough that most people give up and stay subscribed. This is not a subtle point. Researchers have a specific term for it: the dark pattern. A deliberately engineered user interface designed to produce an outcome that benefits the company at the direct expense of the user's stated intention. You wanted to cancel. The interface was built by people whose job was to stop you from succeeding at that, without making it look like they were stopping you. That is not a service provider serving a customer. That is an adversarial relationship dressed up as a convenience. Now let me bring this back to the historical thread properly, because I think the deepest version of this argument is not really about technology at all. It is about a much older question. Every economic system in history has needed a source of value to extract. Feudal systems extracted labour from serfs tied to the land. Industrial capitalism extracted labour from workers tied to factories. What has emerged over the last 2 decades is a system that extracts something different. Not your physical labour, your attention, your psychological patterns, your behavioural data, the specific texture of your desires and insecurities and fears. Shoshana Zuboff calls this surveillance capitalism specifically because the extraction happens through observation rather than through labour in the traditional sense. You are not working for these companies in any conventional sense. You are simply being watched, and the watching itself is the economic activity being monetized. This is a genuinely new form of economic relationship in human history. Every previous economic system required you to do something, produce something, in exchange for the extraction. This one requires only that you exist visibly inside a system built to observe you. Your existence itself, mediated through a screen, is the raw material. That is the specific escalation from television in 1973 to Instagram in 2026. Television needed you to watch. The current system needs you to exist inside its field of observation, and it has built specific mechanisms, the smartphone, the wearable, the always-on connection, to make sure that field of observation follows you everywhere, all the time, awake and asleep, at the gym and in bed, at work and on holiday. There is nowhere left that is not in some way inside the field, except the one place, the actual specific individual thought you have that never gets typed into a phone, the feeling you experience and do not caption, the conversation you have with someone you trust that is not being processed by an algorithm because it happened in a room with no device recording it. That space still exists. It is smaller than it used to be. The platforms have worked very hard, very deliberately, to shrink it, because every moment you spend inside that space is a moment they cannot extract value from, but it has not been eliminated. It cannot be eliminated because it is not a feature of the technology. It is a feature of being a conscious human being having an experience that exists prior to and independent of any system built to observe it. The question this video is actually asking, underneath the statistics and the Uber Eats algorithms and the submarine leaks and the Odyssey trailer, is a simple one. How much of your life currently happens inside that space? And how much of it has been colonized by the field of observation? Most people, if they are honest with themselves, will find the answer uncomfortable, because the specific genius of this system is that it does not feel like extraction while it is happening. It feels like convenience, it feels like connection, it feels like entertainment, it feels like fitness, it feels like love, when you are swiping through faces hoping one of them will be the person you are looking for. It is all of those things, and it is also, simultaneously, a machine that is being paid precisely for every second you spend inside it by people who have never met you and who know, in some specific, quantifiable sense, more about what will make you feel something than you consciously know about yourself. You cannot fully opt out. I am not going to pretend that is realistic or even necessarily correct advice. This channel exists on YouTube. YouTube is owned by Google. Google is one of the largest surveillance capitalism operations in human history. I am inside the system describing the system, and there is no clean way to stand fully outside it while still communicating with you at all. What is available to you and to me is the specific discipline of knowing what is happening while it is happening, of noticing when the gym session has become a photo shoot, of noticing when the dinner order was suggested to you rather than chosen by you, of noticing when the run you logged on your watch was really about the run and not about the streak, of noticing when the feeling you just had gets processed into a caption before you have even finished feeling it. That noticing does not stop the extraction, but it changes your relationship to it. It is the difference between being harvested unknowingly and being harvested while you understand exactly what is happening and choose in the specific moments that matter to you to step outside the field anyway.